What is up, everybody? Welcome to Brainwave Wednesday. I am Dr. Jim. I am a chiropractor in Richmond, Virginia. If you're watching this live on Facebook, I hope that you are ready for some exciting stuff tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the key to improve brain mapping, the key to improved performance at school and at work. I know we're all rolling into the summertime, and some of us may have just finished a long school year, and we're going into the summer, and we'd like to forget about that. But then we start thinking about what's going to happen next year, and maybe this school year was a little difficult, and we need a little help for next year, maybe with focus and attention. And so tonight we're going to talk about how brain mapping may be the key to improve performance at school and at work. So when you guys get on live, if you wouldn't mind putting down in the comments where you're coming in from and whether you're watching it live or on the replay, because I got to know, are you getting the full energy of Dr. Jim live? Or are you watching on the replay? But either way, tonight is going to be a fantastic dive into brain mapping and neurofeedback and how that can help improve your performance at school and at work. And what a great time to be thinking about it, which is this summer. Through an entire summer, we have the chance to train our brains, just like going to the gym. What if we went to the gym all summer to get our brains ready so that when we go back to school, that we could have the very, very best performance in school we've ever had? And that's what tonight's topic is all about. This is brain mapping, the key to improve performance at school and work. And thank you guys for getting on. And again, when you get on, just put down in the comments where you're coming in from and whether you're seeing this live or on the replay. And please feel free to ask any questions that you have throughout this entire presentation, and I will try to interact with you live while we do it. And if you have, if you post a comment after when this is on the replay, I will also try to respond back to those questions. But we love you getting on live. And so put down in the comments where you're coming in from and if you're seeing it live or on the replay. But also, if you find this information super interesting, please like this video, share it with your friends. We want to help as many people as we can with tonight's topic, which would be brain mapping, the key to improved performance at school and at work. So with that said, let's go ahead and let's just dive on in. Now, is that the right one? Yes. Okay. So tonight's topic is brain mapping, the key to improved performance at school and at work. And who doesn't want improved performance at school and at work, right? And so what I want you to know is that what has neurofeedback been used for? Well, over 40 years. That's a long time, right? 40 years of peer-reviewed, university-based research has demonstrated the efficacy of neurofeedback in addressing many neurological conditions. Now, some of the main ones that we're going to highlight tonight are things like ADHD. That's a really big one that affects focus and attention and performance. That's one of the really big ones. But there's ADHD, there's anxiety. That certainly has an impact on a performance at work, panic attacks, learning disorders, all of these, even memory loss. All of these are going to be connected to some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. And neurofeedback has been shown to be an effective treatment for addressing many of these different neurological conditions. But so the question always gets asked, well, how could neurofeedback therapy, this one therapy, affect so many different conditions? Well, it's because each one of those conditions, things like ADHD and attention and focus and hyperactivity and impulsivity and all those, they all are associated. They all have one thing in common, all right? And that's that they're all associated with dysregulated or what are called abnormal brainwave patterns. All right. So what I want you to know is that your brain works in a very predictable way with very normal brainwave patterns. And when we see dysregulations in these brainwave patterns, they have been associated with all those different conditions. And neurofeedback is actually designed to help basically train and exercise your brain to help correct these imbalance or dysregulated brainwave patterns. So the main one that we want to talk about tonight is I want you to know that there's 4 main types of brainwaves, and they go from slow to fast. And you have delta waves, and delta waves are typically most prominent when you're in a deep sleep. All right. So those are the slowest waves. And then you have theta waves. These are the waves that are most prominent right before you fall asleep. And then, so those are the 2 slowest waves. Then you have alpha waves, which are considered idle waves. They're sort of like, they're very, very relaxed, partially focused waves. And then you have beta waves, which are the really fast waves that are most high when you really are trying to pay attention, focus, and learn new things. Okay. And so what we found is there's a dysregulated type of brainwave pattern called delta theta dysregulation. It's when the brain gets stuck in those slow processing waves. The delta and theta waves, the sleep waves and the almost asleep waves. Well, when your brain gets stuck in that slow processing area where we have a super high magnitude or amount of those waves that predominate, even when we're awake, that is known as delta theta dysregulation. The brain tends to operate at a slow processing speed and is considered to be underexcited. Okay. And so studies have shown that delta theta dysregulation can be associated with, this is what we're talking about tonight, some cognitive impairment. So problems, remembering things. How does that affect school and work, right? That will affect your performance. But things like ADHD, focus and attention issues, hyperactivity, impulsivity, easily distracted, right? Excessive speech, disorganized, hyperemotional, all right? Learning disorders. These are all things that will significantly affect your performance in school and at work. And they are very commonly associated with this dysregulated brainwave pattern that's called delta theta dysregulation. All right. And so when I check people in my office that have these conditions, this is typically the predominant issue that we find is delta theta dysregulation. So what do we typically do when we have ADHD or attention focus hyperactivity problems or even anxiety? Well, we typically take medications, right? And you've most likely been prescribed a medication for your ADHD. Now, what I want you to understand is if we think about, let's go back really quick. If we think about that the brain is stuck basically asleep, you're awake, but your brain is processing and pumping out all the sleep waves. Now, why is it ADHD? Well, because a lot of times you'll find that people with attention deficit fidget a lot. They move around a lot. Well, the reason they do that is because their brain is asleep. And the physical activity that they do, the moving around and the fidgety and they can't focus and they're doing all this kind of stuff, it's literally their body trying to wake up their brain. They're trying to stimulate their brain and get their brain excited enough so that it can pay attention and it can focus. And so that's where the hyperactivity comes from. It's because the brain is underexcited and they have to physically move to try to stimulate their brain to wake it up, to get it in the game. Okay. So that's why people are typically hyperactive. So then we go, okay, well, what do the medications that are typically given for that do? Well, if you've noticed, and this was always a giant question I had, if someone has hyperactivity, why in the world are the medications that we give them, why are they stimulants? Like all of the medications for ADHD are stimulants. So we go, well, that seems, I don't know. Why would you give someone hyperactive a stimulant? Well, because, and this is the reason why, this is how they work. Because they're hyperactive, because that is their physical way of trying to get their brain going. That's their physical way of trying to stimulate their brain awake. Well, when you take the stimulant medications, that stimulates the brain and it wakes the brain up. And oftentimes the person will then not be as fidgety because they don't need to, because the medication excited their brain enough to get them able to pay attention and focus. Now, of course, medications can have some real benefits, and you may be seeing benefits yourself from taking those type of stimulant medications. But here's the issue. The stimulant medications don't do anything to change or improve the dysregulated brainwave patterns. The brain is still stuck in the slow processing. It's still stuck in the sleep waves. It's just temporarily and artificially stimulating the brain to get it out of that place. But what happens when you stop taking the medication? Well, when you stop taking the medication, your brain just goes back to slow processing. So the medications work while you take them very often, but once you stop taking them, there's no lasting change or no lasting benefit because the dysregulated brainwave pattern is still there. All right. And so the big question next becomes, how do you know if you have a dysregulated brainwave patterns? How would you know? Well, we do something in our office called brain mapping. And brain mapping actually is a way, it's like an EKG for your brain. And we can read your brain waves and we can see the dysregulated brainwave patterns. And if you are stuck with your delta and theta brainwave patterns, where that's the predominant pattern while you're awake, then it is likely you could be suffering from ADHD attention and focus issues. And by balancing that pattern, making it towards a more normative value, we can have a significant symptomatic improvement in that condition. So what we did, and what I wanted to go over tonight, is a number of patients in my office, we actually did brain mapping, because I really do believe that brain mapping is the key. Because if we do a brain map and we can read where the imbalance or the dysregulated brainwave pattern in the brain, then we have the blueprint. We have the exact map of what do we need to do to help get that back into balance. And if we get it back into balance, we see significant improvements typically in the symptoms. So I wanted to talk about this person first. This is a young man who has been diagnosed and has a lot of symptoms of ADHD. Now, we've talked about the 4 main brain waves. Here we have delta, which are the super sleep waves. We have theta waves, which are the waves most dominant right before you go to sleep. We have alpha waves, which are common focus waves. And then we have the beta waves, which are the really good, like I'm able to focus, concentrate, and learn. Now, when we look at a brain map, like we do in our office, what you're looking for is, you would like for the whole brain to be green, right? So you look over here to the right at beta and you can see a bunch of green. You can look at alpha, you can see a bunch of green. There's a decent amount of green on theta, not as much. But then you look over here at the delta waves. Red means that those waves are high, and yellow means those waves are very high. Now look at these delta waves. They are through the roof. The whole brain is hot red and yellow. We are pumping out a very, very high amount of these delta waves. Now, you would think, now, if this person was asleep, this would be a great brain map, right? Because you should be pumping out higher levels of delta waves when you're asleep. But this person was not asleep. This person was wide awake with their eyes open. And they are pumping out an exceptionally high amount of sleep waves. This is the classic delta theta dysregulation pattern that we see in people with ADHD. All right. Now, the next brain map that we take is another young man dealing with ADHD, also dealing with anxiety and impulsivity issues. And this was seriously affecting, just, certainly attention and focus in school, but it was also having an impact in their interaction with people at school, with social interaction and things like that. So they were really struggling with that. So they came in and they got a brain map, and this is what we see. Now, again, look at this. This is, if we look all the way over here at beta, this is what you would like to see. Notice that entire beta map is all green. They are pumping out just the right amount of beta, which is good attention focus waves, right? They're not too high, they're not too low. They're just right. This is the Goldilocks level of brain waves. But as we move from right to left, as we start to get over to theta, excuse me, as we get over to theta and we get to delta, what we can see here is, again, sorry, everybody. What we can see is all these delta waves, lots of red, 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 and yellow, which means we're pumping out very, very high levels of delta waves, high levels of very high levels of delta waves. And then we come to theta, and there's a lot of red and yellow, so also really high levels of theta. So we have a tremendous amount of these delta and theta waves going on here as well. Again, this is the delta theta dysregulation pattern. And this is ultimately what's driving things like the ADHD and the impulsivity. The anxiety may be coming from a different pattern, which we'll talk about on a different night. But I want you to know that, and sometimes the anxiety is just coming from the fact that we have so much, we're running at such a slow speed. Sometimes the brain, you'll see in other places, it will create other imbalances to try to help make up for what we've got going on over here. So ADHD and impulsivity, there is delta theta dysregulation. And this is the exact reason why we brain map, because this brain map can show you very specifically exactly what your brainwave patterns are and where the dysregulation is. And this is how we knew that this was a great candidate for neurofeedback to try to work on balancing that. Now, the next one we look at, young man dealing with ADHD, OCD, some oppositional defiance disorders, and some sensory issues. Now, this one is a lot more complex, because you can start to see, like, let's look over here at delta waves, all in the red. So we're pumping out really, really high amounts of sleep waves. But remember, everyone, we're awake, so we shouldn't be, right? So those are the signals of the ADDs. Very, very common. Oftentimes, a lot of sensory issues can be connected to that. The theta waves, okay, a little bit there. But then we look at these alpha waves, and those are like really high, lots of yellow, like it in exceptional amounts. And this was definitely affecting things like the sensory issues, and most likely some of the ODD diagnosis there as well. So you can imagine that performance in school would be very, very difficult if, while we're trying to listen to the teacher, while we're trying to take notes, while we're trying to learn something new, the brain is pumping out sleep waves at an excessively high level. The brain is stuck in slow motion. Now, that has nothing to do, everyone, with how smart someone is. It's just that the brain is like, it's underexcited. It is like in slow motion, and we want to get it back up excited. And so what we do is we want to get your delta waves to go down back to normal, and then the others balance it out as we go. Okay. And then the last one we want to look at tonight is a young man was really dealing with a lot of anxiousness and irritable. There's certainly some attention and focus issues as well. And here's the interesting thing. Remember, we've talked about delta and theta as being what's driving the attention and focus issues. Well, we look at this and go, those actually look okay. I mean, certainly there's a little bit of elevated delta here, a number of red spots and 2 yellow spots. So, okay. It does also happen that the The two areas right here, the two yellows on the temporal lobe, are both areas that are the temporal lobes affect emotions and emotional control. So the anxious and irritable, that makes sense that we would be dealing with that. But what I want to do is I want to move over here to the alpha and beta waves. If we start thinking about beta waves being attention and focus and our ability to pay attention, we have blue circles. That means both of these are really low. We have low amounts of these. So you can do it. You can have an ADHD or problems performing in school and at work from having two different patterns affecting you in the same way. You can have delta and theta dysregulation where you're pumping out lots and lots of these super slow sleep waves, and that makes it hard to pay attention, focus. Or you could be pumping out very, very low levels of beta waves and alpha waves, which are waves that help you pay attention and focus. And that's what I think we see. That's what we're seeing here as well. So if those are all examples of what we would find on a brain map. And again, I believe that brain mapping is really the key to determining what your issue is and then how we can go about helping you with it. So how do you do a brain map? Well, a brain map, and here we have our lovely assistant. This is Clara, and Clara, this is her getting her brain mapping done. And when we do a brain map, you can see that we put a cap on the head. It's like a stretchy cap, so it holds snugly on your head. And each one of the white dots that you see on that cap are sensors. Now, those sensors do exactly what they sound like. They sense things. They don't put anything into the body. They're simply reading the electrical activity off of the brain. The way to think of those sensors on that cap, and it's all those different points on the brain, is I want you to think about that cap like you're getting an EKG. You know, they put patches on your chest and it reads your heartbeat. It reads the electrical activity of your heart, and then it maps it out. Well, that's what a brain map does, except we do it for your brain instead of your heart. And we can map out the electrical activity of your brain. It gets fed into a computer and through a very, very sophisticated algorithm. And then it compares that to like hundreds of thousands of normative data to get a picture of what your brain's doing where. And that is how we get brain mapping done. It's very, very simple to do. It's completely non-invasive, and it literally will tell us, do you have dysregulated brainwave patterns or do you not? And if you have dysregulated brainwave patterns, what dysregulation do you have? Like, do you have delta theta dysregulation? And if you do, it's most likely connected to the symptoms that you're experiencing. And that's why we do the brain mapping. Now, once we do that, put the cap on, you would close your eyes, you get very, very quiet, and you just sit there. And we do 6 1-minute readings with your eyes closed. And then we do 6 1-minute readings with your eyes open. It's a total of 12 minutes of readings that can take about 30 to 40 minutes to complete the entire visit. But when we do that, we end up with a brain map at the end, which tells us, do you have dysregulated brainwave patterns? And if you do, then you become a very, very good candidate for neurofeedback. And so that's what we do here. This is somebody actually getting neurofeedback therapy. Now, how do you do neurofeedback therapy? Well, once the brain map determines that you have dysregulated brain waves and that we want to get those into balance, then it shows us, okay, this is too high and this is too low. So we set up in the computer, okay, we want that to come down and we want this to come up. And we put 2 little probes on your head at the most dysregulated sites, and we plug it into the computer, and then you get to watch your favorite show. I believe this person is watching Meghan and Harry on Netflix. But what gets to happen is and actually this beautiful assistant here is actually a picture of my wife. getting neurofeedback therapy. And what happens is when we plug in that protocol into the system, while she's watching Harry and Meghan, when her brain starts to do more of what we want, then the screen shows brightly, like you can see, and she could hear it perfectly. And as her brain moves away from what we want, the screen gets darker and she can't hear it as well. And I will tell you something. It's not just my wife, but it's all of our brains. Your brain wants what it wants. And if she's interested in watching Harry and Meghan, then her brain's going to be like, wait a minute, what did I do to be able to see this and hear this so clearly? And it will go, wait a minute. It'll bring the brain waves back to where they were. It lights up again. It hears it again. And her brain goes, aha, I know what to do to get this to show the way I want. That is neurofeedback. As your brain does what we want, the feedback it gets is the computer, the screen showing it and the ears hearing it perfectly. And as it moves away from where we want, it gets darker and you can't hear it as well. So it gets sort of negative feedback when it moves away from what we want, and it gets positive feedback as it does what we want. Now, the more times that her brain gets into range and it lights up, it rewards her, the more often her brain's going to keep doing that. And it becomes just like lifting weights. Every time she does it, it's just another rep, another rep, another rep. And what that does, it starts to strengthen and balance those pathways in the brain. And that's how we can move from dysregulated brainwave patterns to more balanced and regulated brainwave patterns, just like we're exercising in the gym. But we're just exercising our brain instead of our muscles. It's still a muscle, but you know what I'm saying. So just to give you an example of somebody going through this process, this is a young person, and we can see we had a before brain map. Now, they had significant delta theta dysregulation. Over here to the left, you can see, look at those delta waves. Almost all of them are red. 3 of them are in the yellow, which is very high. That's extremely high, right? Lots and lots of delta waves while this person is awake. Now, their theta waves actually look pretty good, mostly green, okay? So, but lots of sleep waves while they're awake. Now, this is midway through their neurofeedback protocol. And what we can look down now is, now let's look at the delta waves. Almost all the middle is almost all green. We had a very high yellow turn to red. We had a high yellow turn to green. We had most of the reds turn to green. These back 2 reds are still red, but again, we're only at the midway point, and you can see already with neurofeedback therapy, we are improving the delta waves. We're reducing the delta waves. You know what? That's as good as anything. If we can bring down those delta waves, then we don't have so many sleep waves in the middle of the school day, which means, guess what? Now we can pay attention, we can focus, we can we can have better attention, we can have better social interaction because we're more engaged. And that is what's happening. And that is the most exciting thing that's happening here with neurofeedback. Now, I will tell you something very cool is that one of the big important things that we find with neurofeedback therapy is that the results are long lasting. Now, why would they be long lasting? Well, it's because neurofeedback therapy is much like learning to ride a bike. All right. And if you think about it, the first time you got on a bike, it wasn't pretty, right? You couldn't balance the bike. You couldn't get the pedals to go forward or anything. It was a mess. And every time you got on it, you fell over this way, you fell over that way. But eventually you started to fall this way and you went, whoa, and you brought it back this way. And then you started to fall this way and you brought it back this way. And then you were able to get the pedals going in the right thing. And eventually, after some trial and error and some feedback from the bike and your balance, Eventually, you were able to start balancing the bike and start getting the pedals going. And next thing you know, you were riding that bike. That is exactly how neurofeedback works. That riding a bike is simply just feedback and your body learning how to do it. But what happens is, as you did that, the pathways in your brain became ingrained with how to ride a bike, how to keep your balance. That feedback woke up pathways and built pathways in your brain so that that became stronger and more balanced and something that it could easily call on at any time that it needs it. So it is even likely that some of you may have never not been on a bike in 10 or 20 years. But I can almost guarantee you, if you went and got on a bike right now, you could just ride off. How would you be able to do that? You haven't ridden a bike in 20 years. Don't you need to relearn how to do all of that again? No, because it has been ingrained and kind of those pathways have been written into your brain. You have created that strength and that pathway on how to do it. That's how neurofeedback works. And that's the reason why the results are long lasting, is because as we train the brain, we strengthen these pathways and the brain learns how to regulate itself. It learns how to balance itself so that over time, in a situation, in a month or two, it still knows how to keep itself regulated to be able to pay attention and have focus and have um, good attention and engagement and focus learning, because those pathways have been ingrained over time. And so that's how neurofeedback works. That's why it's long lasting. But the key to all things neurofeedback really, really start with getting a brain map. A brain map is by far the most important piece to this entire equation, because the brain map is what will tell us, do you have dysregulated brainwave patterns that we can help you with? Do you have dysregulated brainwave patterns? Do you have delta theta dysregulation that could be driving your attention and focus issues, your hyperactivity issues, your memory issues, all the things that might be affecting you at work or at school? We can determine that from a brain map. And that is why I think brain mapping is the key to improved performance at school and at work. And if you're like, well, I think I really, really need a brain map because I've been diagnosed with ADHD, or my child has been diagnosed with ADHD, or boy, I'm really having problems focusing at school or at work, and this is a big problem for me, and or my child did not have their best year this year. They are having problems paying attention. They're having problems being focused. They're having social problems because they're having problems engaging with friends. Maybe they're really impulsive and things like that. And so getting a brain map done would be the key to really taking care of that. So if you would like to get a brain map in my office, to get this brain mapping done, all you need to do, and it's scrolling across the screen for you, is you just go to braincorerichmond.com. That's our website. Go to braincorerichmond.com, and there is a button on there where you can schedule a free phone consultation with me. And what we're going to discuss on that free phone consultation is, what are your symptoms? How are you feeling? What have you been doing about them? How is that working for you? How is this affecting your life? And if we think that we should go forward, then we can go ahead and we can schedule your brain mapping appointment. And so definitely, if you are interested in a brain mapping appointment, please go to braincorerichmond.com. That's our website. Click on the button to schedule a free phone consultation with me, and we will talk about 15 minutes about your situation and whether I think getting a brain map would be a great idea for you, so that we can determine, do you have these dysregulated brainwave patterns? Do you have delta theta dysregulation that's driving your performance issues at school and work? So thank you guys very, very much. I'm going to stay on for just another minute to answer any questions that you have. But if I don't get any questions, then I'm going to bid everyone farewell for the night. And when you do watch this, if this strikes a nerve with you, please, even though you're not on here live, please comment, ask questions, share this with a friend that maybe they or their child are struggling with performance at school or work because of attention issues or focus issues, social issues. And I would love to be able to see if we can help them. And we would love to get them scheduled up for a brain mapping to see what everything looks like. All right, everybody. So I think that's it for tonight's live. I hope you guys have an awesome day. So just like I tell my son every day before he goes to school, be your very best today. Hashtag never quit. I believe that God wants the very, very best for you. The day you believe that could change your life forever. Have an awesome, awesome night. Good night, everybody.